So, how is everybody this week, though? Anything special happen? Exciting? Bad? Anything that you want to talk about specifically? The conscious couple. Here they are, Jim and Jocelyn.
Okay, hold on. Let me get the.
There
Okay.
you are.
Hi.
What's up?
Hi, guys. How are you?
Great. How are
Good.
you?
How are you?
I am amazing. I've been looking forward to this all week. I've been combing through all of your social media, and I can't get enough of your content. It's exactly what I teach, but you guys are doing it from a married standpoint, and I love that. I love the fact that we're going to be able to have this dialogue tonight of the context of being in a marriage, in a relationship, and exploring the masculine feminine dynamic from that vantage point.
Yeah.
So,
It's kind of cool because, it's like there's a little bit of both here. So,
yes,
married and single, which is
yeah,
interesting because it matters for both, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there's so much. I have so many questions I want to ask you throughout the tonight. So, and
Okay.
then I know there's a lot of my followers are interested in what you have to say too, so I'm really looking forward to this. But if you
Yeah.
guys want to start, if you could just tell us where these people are still coming in, but if you want to tell us where you're from, how you got to where you're at today, what you guys do, what's your background?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'll give a little and you
Yeah,
give a
you go.
little.
Yeah.
So we live in Warner Robins, Georgia. It's like kind of right in the middle of the state. And let's see, I've been here for a little while, and you kind of grew up here.
Yeah.
And we got married 10 years ago, and we have three youngins, three babies.
Okay.
They're not really babies anymore; they're teenagers,
Yeah.
or preteens. Um, and we got into what we're doing. It's kind of an individual journey, and then kind of had this beautiful space of emerging once like COVID hit, and we were both home all the time, and and then we were able to kind of merge into doing some things together, and we still do things individually as well. But my both of our journeys were we were teachers to start
Okay.
our career. I was a middle school teacher, high school teacher, and we both have a master's degree in teaching. And then my journey kind of took a little bit different route than his. I started health coaching, and because I have a master's in nutrition education, and then went and got life coach certification, nutrition certifications, and started in health coaching actually, and wound up leaving teaching in 2016 to be a full-time coach, and transitioned after health coaching into more life, and then moved on to become NLP practitioners, timeline therapists, and hypnotherapist.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell your journey?
Yeah. I taught for like 11 or 12 years. That was kind of like what I thought I was going to do forever. Just gotten that. I had master's in business, master's in educational leadership. I was going to be a principal. And then I was like, what else is in the world? Because, your ability to do things and make as much money as you're worth kind of
and have the impact
that I wanted to do just didn't. So then I got into sales. I sold for several Fortune 500 companies for several years and decided I loved it because I got to be with people every day, impact a lot of people, and made a lot of money. But at the same time, I still didn't get to do the thing I wanted to do. And
Right.
the one thing I learned was when she was running health and fitness coaching is I worked a lot with the husbands of the women she worked with because they were having a hard time dealing with them, making changes in their world. And so we would go to these retreats and the men would be there just kind of like snarls on their faces. And I'm having to be the intermediary and kind of,
Yeah.
and I felt my impact in those spaces. And so I went through kind of like dark night of a soul, I'd say 2017, 2018, and just had to like come to Jesus meeting with myself and went through a ton of work on myself, just a personal deep dive, put your nose to the grindstone and build a machine. And I've been building for a long time, but it was when you start to build it at that rate,
Mm-hmm.
things matriculate fast. And ever since then, it's my goal and dream was to be a man for men that were going through rough times, and they didn't have men to turn to. And
Yeah, I
And
can
we both
100% relate to that.
Yeah, and we both had been divorced, and obviously we came together and we have a blended family. But through divorces, and then even when we first got together, it was like there was still these spaces where we hadn't fully like awakened and healed in a lot of areas, and we attracted each other in wounded spaces, and that manifested in our relationship,
Mhm.
and we had to grow through a lot. And so now, standing today, it's like we're two new whole identities in individually, but then as a couple as well. So
Right.
we got really passionate about what we had to go through to get here, and we see how much that impacts people and just overall happiness within relationships,
Yeah.
and then obviously with self, and recognizing those wounded places that we lived in for so long that didn't serve,
Yeah.
it didn't serve us in the highest capacities. And
Yeah, and when I came to our relationship, she was on a journey that I hadn't. I mean, I had started and I had some understanding around, but I was like, okay, I'm going to have to rise to be here. It was one of those things, and
Yeah.
so when you find that space, a lot of people I knew they get away. They're like, okay, that's scary. Let me run away from that. And it was like, man, I want to be there. I saw her and I saw who she was in the world, and I wanted to be in her presence on a daily basis. And so and it was a goal of mine, and I work at it every day.
Yeah, it's never like you're arrived, right?
No.
It's a constant
Yeah,
journey.
and that's the beauty of it. But like once you heal your past stuff, you'll always have something that you could work on, till the day you die, something that you can better. So the journey really does never end. I think it's important to point that out to people is there's no end, there's no finish line. There's a place of peace where you get to a piece of acceptance and self-awareness and understanding, and then it's just kind of growing from there. But at least you're in your present moment in time. A little backstory on me, because you guys are exactly like what I think when I do. So I was married for 17 years. I've been divorced for going on 6 years now, separated, divorced for going on 6 years now. And I have two teenage daughters, 17 and 15. And after the first initial shock of the separation and everything that went down, it was about a year of me in this dark place, this depression where I was just completely self-loathing. I had no self-esteem, no self-worth. I'd blame myself for everything. And I mean, it's a process. It's part of the grieving process, and it's part of the acceptance of what happened. But then it became like what you had just said. Like I wanted to. I wasn't going to do it for me, the growth. I wasn't going to do the work for me at the in the initial inception of it. But I had two daughters that needed a dad. I had two daughters. My background with my ex-wife was I was emotionally unavailable. All I did was go to work and protect, right? I worked 6 days a week, 60, 70 hours a week. I was strong and, formidable. And like, I thought I was doing enough. I was doing better than my dad did, than my grandpa did. Like, I thought I was doing enough. And she was expressing herself to me. And I was just like, well, I don't even have time for myself. I'm working so much. I can't make time for you. Right. So, and while she was asking was for, more adult time, more adult, conversation, date nights, just like we were at a point in our life where our kids were old enough where we could go out and leave them at home.
Yeah.
We could do those types of things, but I wasn't willing to. I actually never thought she would leave. Honestly, if I'm being honest, I never thought she would leave, but she did. Yeah. So, but like to get back to my daughters, like I knew that I needed to, if I was emotionally unavailable for my ex-wife, then I was emotionally unavailable for my daughters, and I didn't want them to grow up thinking that this is how men were supposed to be. So I set out on this journey in therapy just to heal my past and then see where it went. And that eventually led to sobriety, getting sober, which I'm 2 years sober now. And once that happened, then the wheels, God just kind of revealed everything, his master plan for me. And it was like, okay, you really need to start helping other people get through the, this lifelong journey that you were of abandonments and low self-esteem and insecurities, like all these things. You need to be able to teach this to people. So
Yes.
where I'm at now, I think he has me in a season of a season of singleness, so I can convey what it's like to be a single man in today's society who's overcome all these burdens and all these things, and convey it to them that it's okay to not be okay, that there is a way out, and you can just, if you choose to do the work, there's people out there that will help you, which comes to you guys. So now you guys are kind of in that next realm where I'm not at yet. But I know a lot of people that follow me are, single moms, single dads, have tumultuous relationships, marriages, whatever. So to hear from you guys is an honor tonight. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you for having us on. This is an honor for us as well. So, and it's cool to hear your journey and your story too. That's it's commendable to come out of that and say, like, I need to do that work. There's a lot of people that just stay in that space, I think, of like blaming and shaming and never take ownership, and then just jump from relationship to relationship, and almost it's like same grass, different house.
You bleed into the next one.
Yeah.
Their wounds just get bigger and bigger because more people are going to amplify. And the way I tell people I work with is it starts off as a lizard chasing you down the road. Before you know it, if you don't look at it, deal with it, it's a dinosaur. And when it's there, then it's going to eat you alive, and you're going to suffer a lots of pain in that process. But to piggyback off what you said, when I was going through this growth space, I got $2. One's about to be 15, one's about to be 12. And it was like how I love myself and how I show up for them. I'm teaching them how to love, like their love story, and how to expect love, and how to be in love, and how to see love in men. And if I couldn't be that, then they were going to see who I was being. And that was a burden I didn't want to carry.
Yeah, the whole sobriety thing came about when my oldest daughter, because I was really in a dark place towards the end, and I wasn't spending much time with them. I was making excuses why I was going to hang out with my friends and stay at the bar or whatever I was doing at the time. And my oldest daughter was like, she would have been 15 at the time. She's like, you know what? Just don't come pick us up. Just don't bother anymore. If you can't make us a priority, just, don't worry about it. Just do your thing. And I was, don't worry about it. Just do your thing. And I was, that was like the point in time where I was like, yeah, you're going to have to fix this really quick before, because I love being a dad. I love my daughters. I love everything about it. And it was just kind of the catalyst for me saying, all right, enough's enough.
Yeah.
So kids have a way of putting the truth in front of you. And making you live up to it pretty quickly.
Very, very blatantly.
Yeah. So my young daughter is one of my greatest teachers. She's like, oh, I'm going to show you who you're being in every second. And I'm like, oh my God. Sometimes I just want
to. Yeah. She does that.
So how important is the masculine feminine dynamic in life as a whole?
I would beg to say everything.
Yeah, it's everything.
In relationships specifically, just in highlighting relationships, absolutely. But even in relationships that are not your intimate partner relationships, relationships at your workplace, relationships with friends and family, because oftentimes there's either a polarity, or if you're in your workplace, especially as a female, like there's a lot of times we have to go into that masculine energy to do the things that we have to do to be successful. But I even work with women who are in the workplace and feel like they have to be a certain way in their masculine energy to be able to get up or to move up in their careers and their jobs. And so there's a lot that I cover even in the space of, like, I think so often, just speaking from, just the woman's perspective right now, or the feminine perspective, is we feel like we have to go into that masculine energy to be successful, or to attract what we want, or to get things done. And there's a level where I didn't realize for a long time, when I was just over masculine all the time, and in that drive, building a business and running a household and doing all the things that I didn't recognize that one, I was burning myself out. It's like a candle that just like keeps, burning out, and you can't like get that flame. And it is affecting our relationship, but also like affecting my business and clients, and the attraction level that I think oftentimes we don't recognize as women, that the feminine energy is actually more receiving, more attracting, more radiating, whereas we feel like we have to push forward and go and go and go, where really if we just learn to tap into that, it can actually be way more magnetizing in what we receive and what we get and all that. So that's just speaking from that perspective. I'm sure you can add.
I mean, and like this is the essence of my business, and
Yeah,
kind of what
both of ours.
I love this stuff more than anything. And what I know is it's just relational dynamics, the masculine and feminine. And for men are so adverse to what the idea of the feminine is a lot of times. To explain like, hey, you are this and that, you're masculine and feminine, and learning how to balance both in different settings and with your wife or with your partners, being able to move back and forth, and it be where you can switch roles and move back to your natural essence. So there is an arc of attraction all the time, and have the ability to be vulnerable, have the ability to express emotions, have the ability to hear other people, have the ability to communicate just from the deepest, darkest parts of you, where that's not a masculine trait. That's a very healthy feminine trait. But being able to do that and give yourself the opportunity. Most men have been taught like healthy masculinity is toxic masculinity. Yeah. Like I control shit, I run shit, you're gonna do what I say do. That's the wounded version of ourselves. That's the one that I do shit to keep people away from me so I don't have to feel shit.
Yeah, so
speaking on that specifically, we hear a lot. I mean, the narrative in today's society is women want men to be more vulnerable. What does that look like to you? Both. I mean, how would you articulate if you were a woman in a relationship, or and if you were in a relationship and you were trying to articulate that to your partner, how would that look? What does that mean to you?
For me, it's like tapping into the feminine energy. There's obviously the divine feminine, and then there's the wounded feminine. And I think when it comes to vulnerability, there's two spaces that men can go into. So it's either the divine feminine, where it's like I can communicate how I feel. I'm comfortable with how I feel. I'm confident in having feelings. I don't push it down. I don't avoid it. I don't feel like I'm too manly to express a feeling. I'm able to listen. I'm able to also desire to be heard. And then there's the wounded feminine, that's like that needy energy, the energy of
over emotional.
Yeah, over emotional.
They're like using their emotions to get something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like a manipulation tactic, but we say manipulation tactic, but it's not that someone's consciously manipulating somebody. It's just using their energy to get their needs met without being conscious that they're doing that. And they're doing that to get their wounds met or their holes met within themselves, and in a way that is highly unattractive, highly repelling for the true feminine. And so I know it's like gets confusing, because we're like, we want to be, we want men to be vulnerable, but we don't want you to be needy. We want men to express emotions confidently, but not do it in a way where we feel like if you don't get something from us, then you're not okay. So that's how I would really explain it.
And I was having a conversation with a partner or a client today, and I was expressing to him, it's having the ability to allow somebody to see the darkest parts of you, and not fear that they're going to take love from you, because that's men's greatest fear, is the loss of love.
Now, when you say that, do you mean everybody, or do you mean his tribe, or do you mean his partner specific?
I mean, I would say it needs to be a safe space, because I've been in relationships with narcissists before, so not a safe space.
Mhm.
to
Right.
give myself to them in a way they could use it against me. But I think like if I'm in a relationship with her, I want her to know, and this was a standard that she held when I entered the relationship. Hey, I need to know everything, even if it hurts me. And I want to know all about you. I want to know the darkest parts of you. And for me, that was a hard thing to do because I have been exposed to the fact that if I told you my dark shit, you're going to run away. You're going to
Yeah.
use it against me.
Yes.
But the more I allowed her to see me, not in a way that was exposed to me, this is what built me. These are the things I went through. These are the things that grew me. These are the things that developed me into the man I am today. I'm not proud of everything I did, but I know they grew me into the person I am.
Yeah.
Then she's able to see me from a space that's not this version I need her to see to make me feel good, but it's like, hey, I can see all of you and love all of you. Because that's
Right.
what men really want. Men just want to be loved completely. And a lot of times
Appreciate it, right?
we want them to see us in the version that we think will be loved the best. But women want to see us to love all of us.
Because at the end of the day, like if you aren't, I think a lot of us, and this is men and women, if you try and show up with, you know, the best version of yourself, or the version of yourself that you feel like that person can love or will get love. But in doing that, sometimes we don't show up in our most authentic self, and we don't allow our person to really see us for who we really are. Therefore, we can't truly ever feel loved. Because if our soul, and we know that on some level we're hiding or we're in the shade or we're withholding or we're showing up in a way that's not fully authentic to who we really are, and we're doing that to receive love, but we fear that being authentic is not going to receive love, then we can't truly ever feel really loved, because we're not on some levels allowing ourselves to even be open to be loved. And so there's always this disconnect because, one, we don't feel loved, and on some levels we respond from that wounded space of not feeling loved or not worthy or not good enough. And that creates a space where we go to the relationship in a wounded way to get those needs met, instead of just allowing our partner to see us and be open and confidently about who we are and feel good enough to receive love, even if we're not perfect or even if we don't operate from perfection. And so it's a lot of times we see people and they're operating their relationships, but they're not feeling love truly because they're not allowing someone to see them truly.
Right. Now, there's a question there. If you guys want to take that, I think it's for you and what you were just talking about. It says, when in a new relationship, when do you put that out there? You know, the bad parts, or
I think it's in a new relationship. And I think what we practiced when we first started dating and then
what we coach now
is, you got to be very inquisitive about the people you're with. We asked, because we never met for I think before, when we first started talking to the day we met, it was like a 6 or 7 week period. And so in between that, we probably asked each other 1,000 questions. And every day since then, we still ask each other questions. We're very inquisitive about knowing the parts of us, the things that we desire, the things that we want, the things that we want to accomplish, the things that have built us. A lot of times people are so eager to feel love that they skip the part of knowing who they're being loved by.
Compatibility.
Yeah, and and I've started this process. I say over the last 2 years, it's something that in me that I really felt was like I married her 10 years ago, and I love that version of her, but she's not the same damn person. She's and so if I hold on to the fact hey, I married that woman 10 years ago and I love her. Do you love the woman you're with right now?
Yeah, it takes
the daily
it's evolving,
practice.
right, and growing together. That's why a lot of when people get married at 20, they're different than they were at 30 than what they are at 40, and it's the want to evolve together and grow together. Yeah, and if whatever your end goals were at 20, they may look different at 40, and you're willing to work together to still change the end goals and work towards them.
Yeah, I like the way he says it a lot. Is you have to you really have to be in the space of getting to know your partner every day, because we change every day, and if you don't invest in knowing who your partner is every day, eventually after so long you wake up and you don't even know the person anymore.
Right.
And we hear so much of that, like there's so much disconnect, and I feel like I don't even know them, or I feel like we're roommates, or I feel like, we're all on our phones, and one's over here and one's over here, and next thing you know, 2 months has gone by and we're so disconnected, and then you start having these little arguments or stupid stuff, but it's like there's been no time to actually like connect or actually like get to know who your partner is today,
Right.
because we change every day, and if you have two individuals that are growing and shifting and changing, but you don't take the opportunity to really pour in and get to know who they are, then you miss the mark and you wind up having underlying things that come in the relationship that, like, you start bitching about, like not taking out the trash or the socks not in the drawer, or little naggy things that start happening, like little naggy things that ultimately aren't the real issues.
And I know, like you want to be in a relationship where your partner's on the same growth path you're on.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I know. Like, we're on these individual growth paths, and if I don't pay attention and ask, I'm not going to see what's going on. I'm not going to see the development.
Right.
I'm not going to see what she's thinking through, what she's processing, and vice versa. And so we take time every day to just kind of pop in, reconnect, see what we're thinking about, see what we've read today, see what we've journaled about.
It's about intentionality.
Yeah, I think that's a good, and for me, like at the beginning of a relationship, like I would always, after I got divorced and I was dating and I was kind of in my wilding out stage, I was always dating bad girls, right? And they, because they're exciting and they're, mischievous, and they're all of those things. But it was a pattern, right? And I kept getting hurt. I kept getting, it was exciting in the beginning, and then it just fizzle out, and then it'd be over with as quick as it started. So I got, I got really sick of that pattern. So I just sat down one day and I started to build a compatibility list. Like, if I thought about like weird science, like if I could build my perfect woman on paper, what would she look like, right? So that's what I teach, and that's what I'm going to kind of get into and get your opinion on. That's kind of what I teach, is this: build this compatibility list. First, go heal yourself from whatever past traumas you have going on in your life. And then from a place of love and understanding of who you are, build this compatibility list so you can start to, manifest, I don't know, but pray for the person that's going to complement you in your life, maybe be on the same path as you. Because like, and then this list is kind of like you for dummies. It's kind of like your cliff notes, the cliff notes to you. And this is just something that as you're dating, in the beginning stages, you can kind of resort back to and make it like a checklist almost, maybe not that detailed, but just kind of a mental reminder of what you're looking for. So when you are in those honeymoon stages of a relationship, you're not getting in your feelings and your emotions and letting those take over the logic of, is this person really good for me? So, and I teach people that, like, in the first 6 weeks, right? Figure out if there's some compatibility before you venture into the physical and emotional connection, and it'll kind of save your heartbreaks a lot more that way. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think that's super, super important. And we also do that with clients as well, because it's also understanding like what you're focusing on. But as a caveat to that, something I also do, and I think you do this as well, is I have them really like pour out what their current belief systems are around relationships, around the opposite sex, around intimacy, because we attract who we are. We attract our belief systems. We manifest what we believe to be true. And if we believe, I can't depend on a man, or I can do everything myself, I don't need a man, well, then you're going to attract men.
Or all men are liars.
Or all men are liars. Yeah. Or, it's like what your belief system, core belief systems are, then you're going to wind up attracting that in somebody, and they're going to mirror back to you what you believe. So right. If you believe you don't need a man, or, you can't depend on a man, well, then you're going to attract undependable men. You're going to attract a man who's not independent. So I have them, really break down what are your core belief systems about relationships and about the opposite sex or same sex if you're in a same sex relationship. Like, what about the partner that you want to attract do you believe? And then we start debunking those, because at the core level, that's what we attract. And then also, like, if there's any unconscious, subconscious, I interchange those belief systems around relationships with their parents, and what their parents instilled. Like, I have clients where, just for an example, her mom was a single mom pretty much. And there was a lot of belief systems, because she was in the dating world, and there was a lot of belief systems that were instilled about relationships and about men and about how it works. And she was seeing this show up in her relationships over and over, but didn't recognize that the belief system she had weren't, like, they wasn't even hers.
Right.
It wasn't even something that she installed in herself, so to speak. So it's like really diving into those two. I love your list, and we do that. But I think if you can get to like your belief systems and your identity around relationships,
Yes.
and heal anything that's not aligned with what you actually want,
right,
then you're able to, change the story. And we are our stories.
And
so
I'm also a believer of, I love the list thing, and the list outside of like, because some people will teach like, what are the physical characteristics you like? No, I want I want all of it. I want to know the deepest things that you desire.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And then secondly, the standards you want your relationship to be built on.
Yep.
Like your values and your standards, because whatever you stand on, you're going to find people that are going to vibrationally come to you or go away from you. And if you have no standards, you have no boundaries, and you're just out there, you're going to attract all kind of shit. It's just, you're going to be open. You have an open energy for
which is the healing piece.
Yeah, that's the healing piece. And then I think the third thing that we've talked about, and I know we both did when we went through divorces, feel free to date and know people, because you don't know what you don't know. And you can learn from people as you're dating. And I used it, she used it, where you can talk to people, see things that they're about, see the standards they have, see why they're attractive, they're not attractive. You learn more from people a lot of times and how they are operating than you would from yourself. Because you're like, hey, I really like his viewpoint on this. I really like her viewpoint. I don't like how she's handled herself here. And you can start implementing those things into your world.
Yeah, we call it conscious dating. And it's like you go on a date, and then I always have clients like do a debrief afterwards. It's like, what went well, what didn't go well, what did I like, what did I not like, what were red flags, what were green flags. And you can start really like being conscious about what it is that you actually like and want. And then, are you noticing your red flags? Are you noticing where before, maybe on the first date, if they didn't like do something specific, and a lot of times it's like people who struggle with codependency and things like that, where there hasn't been healing, like if there's not that trauma bond immediately, or if they don't feel that like deep excitement immediately, or we discuss those things, because it's like those things can allow you to have information about, one, what you're still attracting, because you can't attract something that isn't somewhat who you are or what you are. It just doesn't work that way. And then also it's like still seeing, like if I work with someone that's been through a divorce and it ended in a certain way, if there's certain characteristics that they haven't healed, then they have those show up in new people. And so it's like, okay, if I'm still seeing this pattern of behavior in people I'm attracting, then that's something I haven't yet shifted within myself.
And I think too, like you said, a 6-week time frame. Hey, if you don't find compatibility in 6 weeks, if you start to know yourself and know exactly what you're looking for, 6 weeks comes down to 2 dates.
Yes, 100%.
And you become so specific, because it's not about time; it's about alignment with who you know yourself.
Yeah. And I think the important component is, you touched on it, is the boundaries that you set for yourself to protect yourself. But it's the discipline to adhere to them. It's a discipline to look at your list and say, you know what, they're not good at conversation. They can't hold a deep conversation, or, whatever your value is, maybe it's spirituality, maybe it's your religion. Like, they need to be that. you need to be able to walk away immediately. Your deal breakers are your deal breakers. These are your agreements with yourself that you're not going to accept anything less than set A, B, and C, whatever, however many, and walk away from it. But that's part of the healing process, you know. And for me, I was anxiously attached for my whole life, because at 15 years old, my parents got divorced and they went on their own journeys as far as divorce go, which I can understand now because I've lived through it, and so have you, what the dynamic of divorce is. So I understand that what it was at 15. But for me at 15, I was just a young boy that was kind of coming into his, you know, his manhood, I guess, or his, you know, his young manhood. And at that point in time, I had my grandparents die, my parents get divorced, you know, first ex-girlfriends break up with me. Like, I had all these emotional events that I had nowhere to turn to, no one to turn to process them. So it ended up being an abandonment issue for me from when I was 15 years old, like 13 to 15, in that realm, that led me to believe that I wasn't good enough, that everybody was going to leave my life. Why couldn't people stay in my life, right? And it escalated into my, you know, adulthood with my best friend dying. I had no one to turn to talk to. And then when my marriage ended, it just kind of all blew up. Like, I mean, it was that first year was the worst year of my life. I'll never forget it. And that's kind of the catalyst of why I want to help people, you know, for the rest of my life now. But with that said, it took like 4 years of therapy for me to finally figure it out, what was going on. And it didn't, I think it's good to note, and my followers know about this too, I talk about it a lot, is I spent 3 years in therapy healing all of my past traumas, all my past issues. And I got to a point where I 100% believed that I was ready to date again, that I could put myself back out there. I was so confident in myself and where I had gotten to, that once I put myself back into a relationship, it brought up one more abandonment issue that I hadn't healed yet. So when that relationship ended, my pattern of behavior was I would become clingy. I would become, you know, kind of just pour the love on, try and make them love me, try and get them to stay, type of thing. But the beauty of it was, at this point in time, I was able to recognize my crappy behavior and know that it was unbecoming of who I wanted to be and who I thought I was. So I was able to cut off all communication and then go back to therapy and figure out what the hell was going on.
That's it.
Which ended up being abandonment from when I was 13 years old on the baseball field, and my dad showed up drunk to the game. Who knew, right? And he was a complete embarrassment to me and my mom, and it just left this idea in my head of, I'm not good enough. You know, he's not good enough to show up when he, you know, wouldn't hardly ever show up, but when he does, he shows up drunk. So that attached to me, and that's just kind of what I perceived myself to be for my whole life, was not good enough. So
that wound is, like, I think one of the most predominantly, I mean, definitely in most people, you know, that wound is the one that typically shows up a lot in men and women. But I do see it being the one in men that that's there, but it's like it has to be like covered up, like with ego, or you know, like with ego, or you know, with that outward, you know, energy that comes into play, because it's like it's not confiscating. It's like masking that wound and overcompensating with wounded masculine energy. And you see that it comes across as either controlling or whatever, or it can go into the wounded feminine energy, where it's like, now I need to be extra needy, and I need my partner to validate me on everything I'm doing, and I need to dance and do the things and do to get and receive love and to feel good enough. And, oh, did you see I did this? And, oh, look what I did over here. And, oh, I need your love right now. You know, it's just like this needy energy. And
I was the world's worst, so I can
code.
He was pretty bad. He was pretty bad. Yeah.
I have a bad abandonment wound also. So
okay.
Yeah, and not good enough wound. It shows up in that way a lot. Yeah.
I think I tied it back to the other part of the conversation where you were saying about being able to enforce your boundaries and standards. I think what I see a lot of people deal with is they're not comfortable with tension.
Yeah.
Of saying no to somebody.
Well, it's people pleasing.
Yeah, and so because that tension makes you feel a certain way, and you don't want to be judged by saying
we
no
just had that question about what about people pleasers? Why do we feel the
Yeah.
need to please everyone?
Yeah, that's a wounded feminine characteristic, but it's a space where we feel like if we overgive and we do all the things that people want us to do, and we show up and we show up and we say yes and we do the things, then that at some level is going to give us enough love that we feel good enough, or we feel on some level like people are choosing us or people are liking us and all the things that we're doing for them. But in reality, people don't respond to that energy in that way.
Yeah.
It's more so like, then I'm just going to take advantage of who you are and who you're being. Having boundaries and saying no is something people respect way more than constantly being somebody that does all the things. Because people who don't have boundaries, or the people who really like someone not having boundaries, is the one that is taking advantage of them not having boundaries.
That's where your narcissists come in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
I mean, you think
and just wounded.
The wounded feminine energy is where you know the book No More Mr. Nice Guy. That's the identity of the is the wounded feminine. Like, he operates most of his life in that space because he feels like he has to do this dancing motive to make people think he's a good guy, and he's always got some thought in his mind that needs to be taken care of, but he's never able to communicate that out to other people.
Yeah.
And he has no boundaries. He will say yes to everybody, and he feels bad if he even thinks about saying no.
That's that nice guy energy versus the good man energy, right? That's that
right.
difference. That was. I mean, I can relate to that because I had been all through all of those. I don't really like to label it, but you have the F boy, right, where he's really hurt and he just wants to use women, or and then he graduates to the simp where he'll do anything. He puts her on a pedestal and he'll literally do anything and everything for her. And then he kind of graduates to the nice guy where he still has some codependency issues, but he's more passive aggressive. He's more controlling. He's never, he's always at her, always wants to know what's going on with her and always needs validation in the relationship, hyper vigilant about the relationship. It kind of consumes him. And then then if you do all the work and heal yourself, then you kind of graduate to the nice guy or the gentleman who's on his purpose, who has space for her to come in, who respects her for who she is. The interdependence, which is the beautiful part, where that you can take care of yourself, but you identify the value of having a partner in your life and what it can add to you.
Yeah, and she knows you can take care of yourself. I think that's the most comfortable thing for her, is to know that you're going to be okay if she's not okay.
Right.
Because if you fall apart, and she always used to say, if I can do this and you fall apart, like I can crumble you like a cracker, that's not a safe space.
And I don't trust you. It's like when you get into that space where, and I did used to say that because I was like, you're in your energy right now. I feel like I could just go like this and you would crumble to the floor and just like melt to the floor. And like, I can't trust that man. Like, that man isn't someone that I feel I can lean on, or that can be in his power. And it comes in different ways in different spaces, but it's typically from the not good enough wound. It's where it stems from, essentially.
And then you touched on the safety aspect of it, and the core 5 values I teach men, but I think it also applies to women, is physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, and financial safety. Those, if you're a man or a woman, depending on whatever the situation of your dynamic of your relationship is, but if you're a man and you're excelling in those 5 areas, not like you're just knocking them all out of the park, but if you're consistent in all 5 of those safety points, she's probably more times than not going to feel very safe in your aura, very safe in your space.
100%.
Absolutely, 100%. And sometimes we refer it to as just being like in divine masculine leadership, but it's essentially what it is. It's creating safety in those areas, in those core pillars that help us to feel like we can depend, we can trust. Because I think a lot of times what you find is when there's a lack of safety, it also goes to that lack of trust, and that trust has been broken, or there's a wound of not feeling safe. And this is what sends a lot of women into masculine energy, into over masculine energy, because it's like, I got this protection on me. I got this. I'm a badass. I can do it myself. I'm independent. I don't need a man. You're not going to get me. You're not going to penetrate me because I got this. It's like this over boss, for lack of a better word, called boss bitch energy that is just like, it's that wounded masculine where it's like, you have this space where there's been hurt, there's been trust broken. So I'm going to be over masculinized. So then I feel in my power. But in reality, being able to heal that and actually be able to tap into your feminine and be vulnerable and lean back and attract a masculine that can be in leadership. Not saying that, like, people get so confused about, like the whole movement of a man in control or a man, it's not about that. It's about the polarization of the relationship and me trusting his leadership. Not that I can't be a leader of my life, or not that I depend on him to lead me, but it's just him being a leader in the relationship. Then I can lean back and be my feminine and not feel like I have to like ball bust all the time.
Yeah, because we teach we want to leaders in the relationship. I want a woman. Like, I think men that they're working on themselves. They have a high level of consciousness. They have a high level of awareness. I'm attracted to women that are the same. Like, I want them to be confident who they are. They know where they're going. They have a mission in this world. They're on fire for their life. I don't want to. It feels very unsafe to be with women that need you to feel good about life. It's very unsafe.
So how do you, Jocelyn? If you're in that situation in a relationship, and your man isn't making you feel safe in any of those areas, how do you come to him? How do you present that to him in a respectful way, in a safe way that's not gonna, devalue him or create a fear of you leaving, or like he's not good enough? How do you present that?
Yeah, this is like one of my staple courses that I run for women. And a lot of times we feel like we project it onto the man, like he needs to do this and he needs to do this work and he needs to do that. And although, yes, there is work that a man can do to increase in those areas, we also have a lot of ownership as women to look at ourselves. And where are we showing up in this over masculine protective energy? Where do we not trust ourselves? Where have we put on an arm? I always call it armor. It's like the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz. Like, you have all this armor and I don't have a hog, And it's like you show up in that energy, in that space of constantly, and really what it comes down to is the need to be in control. And the need to be in control is there because it's like I can only depend on myself to create safety. So if I can control my environment, I can control things that are going on in my relationship and in my space, then I'm safe. Then nobody can hurt me. Then I can prevent pain. But by doing that, essentially you attract and send your man into the feminine. Because in that masculine energy, if you have your man trying to be masculine and you're both trying to be masculine, then it's going to be like, for a back, like a dick fight. It's like basically like you're fighting. It's conflict, right?
Yeah.
And so it's either going to be that, or it's going to be he immediately goes into his feminine, and it's going to be he turns into a little boy, that you become the mother, or you become the controller, or the person that's you're in control and you're the planner and you're doing all the things. But at what level is that serving you? It's a wounded space. It's a wounded space of protection that we, in that space go into. And yes, it may make you feel empowered, but when you can really heal those spaces and step into your magnetizing feminine energy and be able to lean back, and you can be a magnet for what you desire, and you can lead yourself, but we also teach masterful communication skills, because there's a level of like, you're a pussy or you're a bitch, or like, that energy where the woman goes into, I know I shouldn't have probably said that, but that woman goes
I mean,
into,
I'm sure every man's heard that. So it is what
but
it is.
it's like this like energy of you're a wussy, like, and women get into that energy where they feel like their man is not stepping up or not taking leadership or whatever, and we get this energy of you're a wuss, or you can't lead, or you're not doing the thing. But it's like, well, you got to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And where are you healing the places where you feel like you have to constantly be in this masculine energy, to where there's only one or two things that can happen when you do that. You're going to put your man into masculine, you're going to be fighting, or you're going to put him into feminine energy because you're fighting for the masculine space. Or you're going to put him into feminine energy because you're fighting for the masculine space. So it's healing that. It's healing that wound. It's healing that trust within. It's being able to create safety and tapping back into your natural feminine essence, to know that you're so much more powerful there. Because being in that masculine energy is almost like a fake empowerment.
Right.
If you have to be there all the time.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the masculine feminine dynamic, right? Because it's fluid, and if your man's going to be in his masculine energy 80% of the time, but he has he has 20% feminine available for you, or for his daughters, or for his mother, or for his his people and his tribe, and maybe he goes down for the day or for a couple days, she can step in and take care of business, and then just go seamlessly go right back into her feminine when he's back up and running. That's the beauty of it, right?
And I mean, she's been masterful at being able to communicate to me what she desires. Like, hey, if I need these things, and we're very big on that, like being able to ask for what you want as a right. woman or as a man. And it's not like, hey, I need you to do the dishes. It's I need you to lead in this area. I need you to show up here for me.
Right.
I need you to create space so I can be myself.
Speaking impeccably, making it clear what your intentions are, what your needs are.
Not like I need you to do the store.
Yeah, it's not like this like demanding. It's not demanding, because that's the wounded energy, right? It's more so like an energy of, I care about you, I care about me, and I care about this relationship. And for us to thrive, I really need this. And I really, would desire this. And this would make me feel blank, whatever the feeling is that you're seeking. And ask for an outcome that you desire, but it's not like, coming at somebody, because when you come at somebody, what happens? Immediately, it's just like defense goes up, right?
Yep.
And it's like, then we start fighting, and then there's conflict, and there's nagging, and then you're like, oh, they can never do that, or this is always a fight, or I can never get him to do what I want without a fight. But it's about the energy that we approach something, and it's about us going to a conversation in our feminine energy versus going to a conversation in our masculine energy. Because if you go to the conversation in your masculine energy, you can't expect your man to do anything but go into feminine energy.
I've seen those communities.
Or you're going to be fighting.
How do you guys define the masculine energy and the feminine energy? I mean, I know how I do, but how do you define, like, what would be the bullet points of the masculine and the bullet points of the feminine?
I think for me,
there's divine and wounded, but go ahead.
For me, like when I'm in my best space, I feel very still,
grounded.
I just feel very calm. Like everything around me is calm. I'm calm here, so it feels like everything slows down, and I know I just have a knowing about every step I take is okay.
What about the traits, though? Like, what would be a trait of a masculine? Like a protector?
Very logical. I'm very logical in the way I think. ABC 1 2 3. If you see me doing 1 2 3, I do that a lot. I'm very directional in terms of I know where I want to go and I know how to get there, and I don't need anybody to tell me. Even if I fuck it up, I think I know the redirect to get me back to the right place. I'm also very heart centered. The masculine is they're very love centered, and for me, like love is the core of me. I love hard, I love deep, I love with, I mean big, and so for me, when I'm filling that space, And also from the other part would be just super present where they are, being where their feet are. They're not fidgety, they're not up walking around pacing the floor, dancing around, doing a bunch of shit. They're just kind of, if you need them to be there, they're there.
I like to think that the grounded masculine too is not going to be part of the societal hierarchy. He's not going to be following this narrative. You know, he's going to be grounded in his own time and space and his own tribe and his own life. He'll accept, I mean, he'll be paying attention to the world around him, and he'll accept change when it makes sense to him and his tribe. But for the most part, it's going to be him and his people.
Yeah, and it's being able to be independent but not isolated. It's right. It's a level of also being purposeful and mission driven, but not needing their partner to be their purpose, or that, because we work with so many men that they make their partner or their marriage or their family their purpose. And although those things can be part of their purpose, if they don't have mission and purpose in their life, right, then there's a disconnect, within them, which therefore is a disconnect within the relationship.
There's a heavy expectation put on the relationship to provide something that it can never provide. Correct. And there's a lot of resentment that gets built up with their partner because their partner can't be what their purpose could be.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And have to get
so if you're a man, you can absolutely not have your whole world be your wife or your family. You need something that you're passionate about, whatever that may be. There's a million different things you could be.
It drives women crazy, honestly. They say I want you to be I want to be the center of your world, but don't make me the center of your world, because I can't deal with that pressure. It's scary.
Well,
it's unfair.
But you also have the wounded space where it's like men use that to isolate. Yeah. And so they go and use hobbies or overwork themselves or pour in their work too much because they're actually trying to isolate because they're miserable or because they're fulfilling, versus like, I am purposeful. I have purpose and I'm living in alignment with my life, versus I'm using purpose or work or whatever to overcompensate lack of the connection at home, and we call those things sometimes sexual substitutes, but it's like using things outside of the relationship to fulfill something that's missing with the polarity within the relationship.
Right. So and that couldn't be more. I was that guy. I buried myself in work. I just thought that I had to provide and protect, and I was good to go, right? Mm-hmm. So, but there was a question a few back. So if you are, let's say you're a woman and you're in a marriage or you're in a relationship and you're trying to get your partner to understand these dynamics that we're talking about. However, let's just say you're presenting them in a safe way and you're communicating impeccably what your needs and wants are very clearly, but they're unwilling to do anything. What then? I mean, how long do you beat your head against the wall, per se, with someone who's unwilling to do the work?
So we always kind of describe it like this. It's like, if you know and you go to do the work yourself and you're showing up, you're doing the work, you're growing in yourself, you're becoming more in your divine feminine, you're healing the wounded masculine, you're doing work to recognize that you are showing up in the relationship in an aligned way, that you're communicating in a powerful way, that you're leading yourself in balance of the feminine and masculine, and then your partner is not responding to those things and basically is not willing to do work and rise themselves. At some level, there has to come a space where you no longer become a vibrational match, because as we rise and as we shift, if our partner doesn't, and this is what we're talking about earlier, like, you have to get to know your partner every day. It's a ever growing, or you're going to be so disconnected and off energetically that it's no longer a match. And when something's no longer a match, it either has to fall off, or there's constant resistance and constant like annoyance and constant like, this isn't aligned. Yeah. The energy is always off. And so you have to make a determination at what point are you going to continue to settle in a relationship that's no longer aligned for you.
Mhm.
And if you communicate in a powerful way, hey, I'm doing this work, I've done this work, I have these expectations, but not like I expect you to do this, but it's like an energetic standard. And you communicate these things and they're still unwilling to show up for the relationship, then at some point you have to ask yourself, is this person someone I can continue to show up for 100% if they're not willing to show up 100%?
So it goes back to standards and boundaries.
Yeah.
You know, what are you willing to stand on as a standard and boundary of your relationship energetically? And what are you willing to walk back?
Mm-hmm.
Because
And I
if you
think if you're-
continually walk it back, they're gonna take advantage.
Yeah, and if you're in that space for long periods of time, I think it says a lot about who you are and where you are from a healed point of view. If you're allowing this behavior, over and over again, it says a lot about you, and there's more work to do on you than you shouldn't be trying to force someone to do something that you can't do. And by
100%. That's essentially what happened in our relationship, because I was doing so much work on myself in this area, and had advanced so much. I had gone away for 4 weeks and done intensive personal work. I had been working on myself, and it came to this point in this head where his wounds and his stuff was still like very prominent in the relationship. And I know you would speak on this just like I am, but to the point where it came, like I came back from that space and I was like, I'm no longer energetically available for this. And it's like almost a standard that you hold and you have, and a confidence that you build in yourself that I don't need this relationship to be okay. And if it's no longer aligned and I'm staying, then I'm not serving my highest self and my truest light. So I pretty much, it's not giving an ultimatum. It's having a conversation and asking the person and communicating powerfully with the person. And if they're not there, then they're going to fall out. And essentially he had that moment where he's spending the night in his vehicle in Kroger parking lot. And
I've been there too, so I laugh. I've been there too.
I remember it.
Yeah, and like had this moment of like, shit, like I'm not rising. I'm not being who she needs me to be. I'm not being who I desire to be. I'm not being my true self. And had like this awakening, and from that space, he chose to go to bat and go all in and do his own work and show up. And therefore he rose, and we were able to still continue to grow together. Had he not done that work then, and this is like 2018, had he not done that, we wouldn't be here right now.
Okay. And she communicated in such a way, it was like, I love you to death and I love you for the rest of my life. There will never be a day that I don't love you. But that doesn't mean I have to be here.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, shit, I can respect that. And then I had choices. And that's the key, is everybody has choices no matter what the relationship is.
Well, I think
you have a choice and they have choices.
I think it's important to note too that there's a huge difference between setting a boundary and giving an ultimatum. An ultimatum comes from a place of control and a place of negativity and a place of instilling fear in you, where the boundary is just like, hey, like you just said, I love you, I'll always love you, but I can't love you, I'll always love you, but I can't keep doing this to myself. It's, the boundary is set to protect you from yourself, from your own, inner dialogue.
And I even told him, like, it's not even about you or who you're being. It's about me and where I've grown to and where I'm going. And if you're not available to show up for that, then I'll love you. And there's nothing wrong with you. It's just where you're at in your walk, but my walk's going this way. And I can't any longer hold myself here because it's not ultimately helping me to feel inner happiness and peace and me to be able to step into my highest self. And
we legit now, we meet every quarter and talk about new boundaries we have and new standards we have, because they're always changing. I mean, we did one in February. We were actually talking 2 days ago. We got some new boundaries we want to put in place and standards we want to put in place for our relationship and just for where we're going. Yeah. Just because we see things differently every day, and we experience things differently every day, and we want to make sure that we're both in the same growth space.
Yeah, because different things come into your life at different moments, especially as a couple, you know, and individually things come in, but also as a couple things come in. And 2 days ago, we really had like this a space of awakening of where we were letting something slip in our relationship because our business, you know, exploded in a lot of ways, and in that we started blurring boundaries for how much we were pouring into that area of our life and missing the area of us in our actual intimate relationship.
That got
And
you guys here.
Yeah.
yeah, and so we set new boundaries around phones and around time, and then set in I think we kind of just talked about this, but we're going to have an actual like space where we really dive into it. But where we just start taking like a weekend, like romantic getaway trip once a quarter, and just things that we can start putting into place that if we see something start getting off, we communicate that in a powerful way and say, okay, well, what is it? What is our combined agreement here? And it's not like, I need us to do this. I need you to do this because you're making me feel this way.
Yep.
Oftentimes, especially as women, sometimes because we speak with feelings,
Yeah.
we'll say, you're making me feel
Or
blank.
you need to.
Yeah, or you need to blank, right? But it's not you're making me feel, it's I feel. There's a big difference when you go to a conversation and say, you're making me feel XYZ, or you're always on your phone.
Yeah.
Versus like you're always on your phone. What is the response? Is going to be an immediate attack. No, I'm not. I'm not always on my phone. You're on your phone, you know? But if I go and say, I'm feeling lonely and I'm feeling disconnected, and I feel like sometimes we're on our phones too much, and I need to feel more connected to you, or I desire to feel more connected to you right now. The conversation that creates becomes much different than you're always on your phone. You never pay attention to me, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've implemented several years ago. Every Friday we meet. We call it Freedom Friday, and we just do like we run part of our relationship like a business. So, like our financial side, we have a financial meeting every Friday with each other, and then we have a scheduling meeting every Friday together, like what we're doing individually, what we're doing together, and then what we're doing as a couple. So every week we're scheduling time, probably every 2 days, to have deep conversation at night. We're scheduling times when we go to bed so we can connect before we fall asleep. We're scheduling time to go on dates. We make time every week to really be intentional being together.
It's intentionality once again.
Be
It's
intentional. Yep.
Yeah. And it's hard to do that if you don't have if you're not consciously thinking about it.
Yes.
Because we're all so busy in life and kids and craziness, and if you don't have intentionality in your life, then you're just living your life unconsciously. And you know, we all live our life like 95% from a subconscious space, on autopilot, on, you know, patterns of behavior. But it's like having that moment where you're like, we need to be way more intentional in this area and making it happen.
Yeah.
Creating new habits of behavior, creating new patterns, and being conscious in your life rather than just get up, go to work, do the same thing, come home, turn on the TV, zone out, drink a beer. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
how are we being intentional every week to know that we're meeting those core pillars that we care about in our
Right.
purpose, in our business, in our relationship, in our family, in our finances.
Because you know how it is, being in your masculine, we both get there and we can work until our eyes bleed.
Oh yeah.
And then we wake up the next morning and do it again. If you don't learn how to turn it off and like, hey, I need to, there's other things going on. 3 kids, wife,
Yeah.
life, enjoy
And
yourself.
that's a dynamic that I kind of, because for the last 3 years I had been working. I mean, I would have worked 7 days a week if they let me, and
Yeah.
sometimes they did. But you know, for my daughters now, it's like I need to make sure that I'm providing space for them, you know, to interact with me, to be part of, you know, to be part of their lives. You know, intentionally, I have to make myself stop working, or else I will just work myself to death. So,
Absolutely.
speaking of that, though, Jocelyn, here's a very specific question for you. How can single moms who are forced to be in their masculine energy by default. How can they work towards, spending some time in their feminine throughout the day, or maybe setting aside some space? What can they do to kind of start growing back towards their feminine energy?
Yeah, it's like I always kind of view it in some ways as like tapping back into your body. It's like even paying attention to your body. So for me, some things that I had to do is I had to like put on dancing music and start dancing, or get in a bath, or I would go out and I ground myself in my grass, because it's like the grounding of nature kind of like pulls you back into your feminine as well. If it's like you can get into your body, because masculine is like the doing, right? It's like I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm planning and I'm controlling and I'm navigating. It's like, how can you do more of the beingness? Like, how are you
Right.
being with yourself? Is it journaling? Is it reading? Is it dancing? Is it baths? Is it self-care? Is it going to, not that like feminine energy is like going to get your hair done and your nails done, but it's like those spaces where you can really like pour love into yourself and lean back and receive.
Yes.
Oftentimes what I had to really practice for a long time is noticing where I was not able to receive, because feminine energy is a receiving, whereas the masculine energy is the giving and the output. And when you're in your masculine, you're constantly outputting and all over giving and doing this for this person and doing that and doing. So it was like, okay, I had to be really intentional about how can I allow people to give to me? How can I allow myself to receive? Because even like compliments, like a lot of times women who struggle to receive, if they get a compliment, it's immediate deflect.
Yeah.
Like there's not a receiving, like a full body receiving. It's like, oh, thank you, but you're so sweet. Or, oh, not even sometimes saying thank you.
Yeah.
Like, oh, your hair's pretty. Oh my God, but your hair is so pretty. It's like not even being able to receive. It's like putting yourself in positions that you can be somebody who's comfortable with receiving. And the art of receiving is a powerful thing that I work with females on when it's tapping back into that feminine energy, because we do so much outwardly and overgive and try and control everything. But it's like, I ask my clients sometimes at the end of the day, I want you to tap in and type or list out 5 things that you did today to be in a receiving energy. Where did you allow yourself to somebody to give you a gift, or someone to give you a compliment, or sometimes it's even the smallest things, like my kids, like when they do something, am I like smallest things, like my kids, like when they do something, am I like feeling like I need to go fix it and I need to do it all, or am I like, do I actually receive from even my kids? There's so often where when we're over masculinized, we do not have the ability to even be a receiver. And so sometimes I'm like, how can I receive? I'm gonna go get a massage. I'm gonna receive somebody else taking care of me. So those are just some examples. I mean, I could probably come up with more, but it's just getting back into your body and
Get out of your head.
Getting out of your head and being somebody who taps into the beingness instead of so much of the doingness.
What about the component where, the wounded feminine might become codependent on their children, overbearing or over controlling, or not allowing them to make mistakes, or consistently sticking up for them when they shouldn't, right? They're just coddling them. What about that component?
Yeah, so there's a lot of that's actually the wounded masculine, but it's the space of feeling like we pour in, like in that space there's wounds within us, and we're projecting it onto our kids. So it's like, for example, if you were a kid and your parents were always critical of you playing softball or you playing baseball, and they're like constantly, you were never good enough to do those things, then you're going to then pour into your kids, like, and make them prodigies of what you felt like you weren't good enough to be. And so it's almost like a passing down. It's like a generational wound that we wind up passing down to our kids, because we need them to be ultimately what we have lacking in ourselves, so that then we feel like we're doing it for ourselves. Our kids become like our little like projection of our wounds. And I mean, you could probably add to that too, because I know
Yeah.
we've talked about that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my dad and my parents, they treated me as such, and so I mean, I have that wound a ton because of the way I was raised. My mom, both her parents died by the time she was like 13 or 14, so she ran a household when she was 14 or 15, 14,
Right.
15. And as she raised me, as I became, and I was super successful about everything I did. It was just, it's what I did. I just could show up and do things. And she disowned me the more I did them because she was never allowed to do them because she had to work and she had to provide for her brother and sister and she couldn't go to school and she couldn't do things like that. So the more I became successful, the more she distanced herself from me.
The more it's like jealous or like resentment that
it's
she
like
didn't get to do that.
Like she was looking for you to be her emotional safe place.
Yeah,
But
and found my brother. My brother became.
I see that a lot. Sorry for interrupting. I see that a lot, you know, and then when your kids turn 18, 19, 20 and they leave and go start their own lives, then mom or dad are sitting there at home like really resentful and aggravated and angry, and you know, it's not a healthy place to be. And I like, for me, I'm raising my daughters to go out and start their own lives. Like I'm loving and caring, and I will always be there for them. But I'm not codependent on them, and I don't plan on them staying with me for the rest of my life, or you know, living in my house. Like I want them. I'm training them right now to go be their best selves out in this world and start their own families. But I think a lot of people, like in today's society, when they get divorced, they're so resentful and so hurt that they just kind of like create this shell around themselves and their kids and just kind of stay in that space and try and keep their kids with them as long as possible.
Yeah.
That's something we do a ton. We've already let them know, like, hey, we have plans, you know, in the next 7 years, and we're going to this place over here.
We're like, we're moving to the beach. Y'all are out.
And they're like, but you're gonna leave us? It's not that we're leaving you. You can come visit anytime you like. You have a room, but we want you to live your life.
Yeah.
We'll support everything you do. We'll take care. We'll be there for you. But I'm not going to raise you in college. I want you to start raising yourself. Because I think what we have is a lot of kids that don't know how, and I see this a ton. I've worked with some teenagers in my working with men too, is that they are not being taught how to be themselves individually without somebody telling them how to be. And so you got to, you know, the way I grew up, my mom and dad were like, hey, you got to get out there and cut your teeth, and it's going to be a rough world. You're going to fall down a little bit, scrape your knees, and you got to figure it out, get up, rub it off, and work on it.
How about this, Jim?
Yes.
Are relationships 50-50?
No, 100. I teach that 1,000%. And man, if you see how much feedback I get from people, like when I do lives, oh, you know, but traditional, it's 50-50. I say, no, that's not traditional. That's this idea that I can plug into the relationship to get 50% of me full, because I can't bring a full me to the relationship. And it always ends up in an over giving of some way, whoever it is, the guy or the girl. And it becomes an issue of somebody's burnout, somebody gets resentful, and there's a lot of wounds in that area that come about. We're so specific on the work we do individually so we can show up kind of complete every day. Because there were times where we both needed each other because we weren't working on ourselves. And it became draining for both of us. And so now it's an everyday process of, hey, I'm going to show up and do my thing, because I wake up first in the house every day. So I'm doing my process every morning at 5 o'clock. I go work out. I give myself a good 2 or 3 hours. I'm ready to give to the world at that time. I'm good to go. Yep. I'm healthy. She does her process. She's healthy, and we're not needing each other to feel good about life.
Yeah, it's like if you have 50-50, it's like you have 50, and then you need that person to fulfill the other 50 within you. Whereas you have 100 of my stuff individually. I think it's like we all get so caught up in like the relationship is the individualism gets lost, and the relationship becomes the person's identity. So
Yes.
I think so many people say, like, I get so lost in relationships, or I lose myself in relationships. And that's because we go in and we take on that the relationship is our identity rather than we have an individual identity within the relationship.
That's important.
Right.
That's
And
a thing men do a ton.
Yeah.
I mean, I know women do it too, but men lose themselves so much to try to fit into a place.
Yes.
And they don't know how to be themselves in that place.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's how it was for me too. Like, I thought that all I had to do to be a great husband and a great father was to protect and provide. So I just kind of immersed myself in that. I gave up hobbies. I gave up friends. I just became this shell of who I was just so I could provide a safe place financially and physically for my family. And it goes so much deep. But that's what we were taught, right? That's what we were taught.
That's the societal view.
Yeah. I mean, back in the 90s, it was still taboo to talk about mental health. It was still taboo for men to talk about their feelings. It was, you know, you just didn't do it because you were looked down on, you were looked at as weak. And, you know, it's that whole conservative idealism that doesn't serve anybody in the confines of a relationship. And that's why we're seeing 50% divorce rates now. And we're seeing men who don't want to get married again ever, or, you know, men teaching that narrative. And it's kind of scary. But I think now, like, and my theory on this is that, you know, the first two waves of femininity were needed to even the playing field. And then the third wave of femininity just went so far past where it was supposed to go that now, you know, men are being devalued. Men are being looked at as only good for procreation. They're only good, you know, that's all they're good for. But then the narrative is being flipped on them as well, as that's all we want is sex, right? That's all we care about. But it's kind of like what we're taught nowadays by the feminine, who says we're not needed for anything but. But I'm starting to see, and I don't know, you guys are seeing this in your coaching, that like women are like, yeah, okay, I can take care of myself. I can 100% provide for myself and do everything, but I don't want to. Like, I want a man. Like, I want the companionship. I want the masculine man laying in bed next to me. I don't want to cut the grass. I don't want to shovel the snow. I don't want to do those things, you know? And then you're starting to see men like, okay, you know, they're women are starting to articulate to men, okay, well, I just need you to do this, which is this vulnerable piece. This is all I need from you. And you're starting to see men like, okay, I can do that. I can start working to see men like, okay, I can do that. I can start working towards that. And I think there's that shift happening in society now that's just getting started.
Yeah. And when I think about that, and like, even I know earlier we talked about like, how can women kind of lead the situation in some ways to ensure that their man can stay in the masculine or be in the masculine. There's also that space where the masculine can show up to have the woman in her feminine. And, you know, it's a feminine trait actually to crave variety. And we think so much like, oh, men want variety, or men want, you know, no, technically that's not true. The masculine wants love and safety, and the feminine is what craves variety and spontaneity and surprise and lust. And, you know, that's a feminine trait actually. So what we find is there is a lot of women that are missing that in their life, in their relationships, and they say like it's boring or it's mundane, or they never do anything that's like spontaneous or the element of surprise. Mm-hmm. And when we first really started, I mean, he really started studying a lot of this, it was like he would call me or text me from somewhere, and he's like, you need to be ready at 7:00. You need to have on that black dress and that black thong, and I want you ready at 7. And I'm like, where are we going? Like, what are we doing? Mm-hmm. Like, you know, and it's like the element of surprise and variety, and him planning something, and that is like juice for the feminine to just go in and like lean back and don't know where we're going, but there's variety and there's surprise and there's leadership from the masculine. That is what ultimately like sends us into that land of excitement. And I think so often it's like, well, women don't want sex, or women, whatever. But there's just this element where the energy's not there because there's not polarity, or the masculine's not doing those things to create that energy within the feminine.
Yeah,
So
and what has happened, and you were talking about the feminine movement, the three feminist movements. It's what's happened is men have become feminine in nature, and that's why you see so many men that are going after so many women. They need a list because they're in the variety mode. They haven't their safety is not safe. So they're just like, I'm going to do everything that's not safe. And so what has to happen is the men need to move back toward the thing that they want, which is love and safety, and provide the variety to their feminine partner. That allows them to be themselves, because the thing that men desire in all ways, whether it's emotionally, sexually, or any type of way, it comes from your ability to allow her to be herself in her feminine energy. It has nothing to do with anything else. Your woman wants to do all the things that you desire her to do if you allow her to be herself and she can trust you there.
Yeah. And I think it's important too. I think it's important too that, you know, in that space, like if a woman really does want a relationship, you know, at the foundation, and she puts out there that she doesn't need a man for anything, that's exactly what she's going to get. And we touched on that early on. So I implore women to, say, I don't need you, but I want you for A, B, and C. This is what I need from you, X, Y, and Z. Like, be very specific in what you do need from a man or want from a man. Or, you know, people get hung up on the Webster's dictionary of want and need. And I think they go hand in hand in a relationship. They're, you know, they go together. So, I mean, if you're that hyper focused on the definition of a word and not being vulnerable enough to actually need someone in your life or want someone in life, however you want to define it, then that's exactly what you're going to get. You're going to always have that wall up, and you're not going to allow anyone to come in.
Yeah. And you attract unavailable men, like unemotionally available men. And it's like, well, men, you know, never really love, or they don't give me attention, or they're not this or that. Well, why? What's your core belief system around that? How are you showing up? Because you attract you attract that.
And it's too, like, their needs and wants, but then what do you desire? Like, because everybody needs certain things. Everybody.
Yeah, we have a hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, but then it's like, what do you desire from a partner? Like at the deepest core, darkest levels, whatever it may be, in your ability to connect, your ability to be intimate, your ability to do anything, those are important to know. Those are important to see. Those are important to communicate, because if you have these things that run through you and you feel like you're going place to place to place to try to find them and nobody knows what you're looking for, you'll always be empty. And that's what we see a lot of times.
Yeah. And Crystal said, I always say that. I say, I don't need a man. I want a man. And I just, again, implore you to be very specific as to why you want a man. Let him know what you do want from him, and let him decide if he can give that to you or not. You know, maybe not in the specifics so that he manipulates you, but be very clear in what you do want a man for.
That can get tricky. Yeah.
1,000%.
So in the last, I have another serious topic that you guys are good at talking about. I don't know how much time you have, if you have another half hour or not, or if that works for you.
Well, we have to probably get our daughter in bed. We probably have about 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Okay. Let's talk about cheating.
Okay, let's do that.
Why do people cheat?
Yeah. You know, we triggered a lot of people on that video.
Yes, you did.
I don't know if you saw that one, but it was very triggering. And I get it, because the context of when you have a short window of 3 minutes to explain a big topic, and it comes in, you know, a certain way, people get triggered. But
we did a podcast about it later that kind of went deep into it.
Yeah, we took an hour instead of 3 minutes to talk about what we were talking about, right? But and the video that was so triggering was why men cheat specifically, and then, you know, we did one why women cheat, and the context of that is why the masculine cheats versus the, you know, the overall opinion or the misconception that men just want sex, or men just cheat for sex, or it's all about the physical. And although, yes, that's the manifestation of cheating, or that's what is used at the core, men cheat or feel the desire outside of the relationship because they're not feeling desired, respected, appreciated, loved, or there's the lack of polarity where they're constantly feeling emasculated. And so it's like that space where a man goes to an outside source, and the person's always like, I can't believe she would do that for you or wouldn't do that for you. You're so amazing. You're the best thing ever. You could never do wrong type of vibe, right? Whereas women, it's more like the Rico Suave, the one that comes in with the surprise, the swagger, the masculine bad boy, the
emotional
element of
availability.
like, yeah, exactly. And it's that level of surprise and element and lust, because the feminine's more like variety, lust, surprise, spontaneity, whereas the masculine's more safety, respect, desire, from a like, you're so amazing, versus like, I want to jump your bones, which, I mean, if there's no sex in the relationship, obviously the masculine's very physical and expresses connection through physicality sometimes more than the feminine, but there's always those deeper foundational things going on as to, if we're just talking about healthy relationships or healthy people. Now, obviously, why people cheat overall, there's a lot of wounded spaces. It's a validation issue. It's a narcissism issue. It's a wounded issue where they're getting wounds met and fed. It's sometimes a sex addiction issue. So there's, core wounded reasons why people cheat, but
there's a lot of surface space, but the surface is always tied to the wounds. And a lot of people don't explore the wounds. And I'm a firm believer that cheating is a death by 1,000 cuts. People just don't hop in bed. It just doesn't happen. There's been 1,000 cuts that led to that moment. Yep. And they're they're micro breaks of integrity between the relationship, whether it's communicated or not. And usually it's not communicated. Like, I expect her to do this. If I'm doing this, then she should be giving me this. If I'm doing that, then she should show up like this. And she doesn't know what the hell's going on in your head. And you're expecting all these things of grandiosity to show up for you. Yeah. And when they don't, you're like, well, hell, what am I? Well, shit, I'm sure somebody else will approve of this. And it just happens. And we don't even, men don't even go looking. It just shows up because it's in your head that you're missing it. You start to lack it.
It's why women like romance movies and the love stories, because those movies really, they're like at the beginning of their relationship when everything's exciting and the man is like a certain way and it's all romantic and it's the element of surprise and variety and lust. But those movies always stop at the wedding date. If you don't, if you can really think about it, most of those movies stop when they get married at the end, right? That's why men really don't enjoy those movies, because they're like, this shit isn't real. This is fake. This isn't love. This is lust. This isn't real. Like, and then it's like that element of the woman's always sitting there like, you never do this for me anymore. And why can't you be like that? And, I want that. And it's like this desire for that lust and that element that you have in the beginning stages of relationship.
And the man's like, you used to sleep with me in the back of the car, and now I can't get you to sleep with me once a month. So it's a big difference, right?
And then that's why men like porn. It's like, you used to be the person who would be wild and crazy, and now you're like, I don't feel like I'm not going to do that. or it's like, that space where when we first meet, it's like, I'm dressed to the nine and I smell good and my hair's done and I care about that person and how I'm showing up for the relationship. And then all of a sudden it's like we lose that 3 months in, 6 months in, and it's like, I don't even care if I took a shower. I didn't shave. I didn't do anything to get into that space where I'm like, ooh, he gives me butterflies and, I can't wait. And the masculine really likes that, that desire, that respect, that affirmation. And that's essentially why they wind up cheating, because their person has gone into this space of like, I don't care what I look like for you. I don't care what I do for you. You should just love and accept me. But Yes, and
They're going out with the girls dressed to the nines, doing the thing, and you're like, what the hell?
but it's not even about like dressing in the nine and doing the thing. It's not about the beauty part of it. It's more about like them feeling like you care enough to
show up
for them, like you did when you first met. You know, where like there's butterflies and you know I put on my perfume and I wear my favorite underwear and like I'm looking good, you know, and I care to where then it's like I'm wearing granny panties and I hadn't shaved in weeks and I look like a haint. And but then I'm gonna go to work where I got Rico Suave over here and all of a sudden I start dressing sexy and I wanna like it's like that element where that gets lost.
Yeah.
And it goes into science and chemicals and oxytocin and all those things. But
the dopamine hit, yeah. And that's you mentioned the porn part of it, and that couldn't be any worse of a of a thing to do for a man than turn to porn. I mean, it completely turns him off from it lowers the testosterone, like you said, from a chemical standpoint, and turns him off and gives him this ideal of what sex is supposed to be in a relationship, and it's just a complete falsehood. And I also think that with the access to porn on the internet nowadays, our young boys really need to be taught that this is not normal. This is not how sex works in the confines of a healthy relationship. This is fantasy. This is, it's not how it works. And I speak that from my own experience because I grew up that way and I thought that's what you were supposed to do. And it created a huge wedge in my marriage when, years back. But yeah, it took a long time to break that addiction. Just like any other addiction, it's the same thing. It's a dopamine hit that you're getting from that initial experience. And you should be striving to get that from your partner, but communication breakdowns, everything that we spoke about tonight.
It's usually attached cycle to a good enough wound, right? And it's a wound that's attached to it that you're trying to make go away.
Yeah, because in porn, if you recognize a lot of porn, it's like the women will do anything for the man, and in those scenes, like it's like they'll do anything and they're available for anything, and then there's in the perception is he can lead the feminine to be and do all these things, whereas in real life it's like she won't do this or I can't move her, and they don't really consciously recognize this, but their masculine leadership isn't strong enough to actually move their feminine partner, so they feel that disconnect, they feel that space of inadequacy, or she won't do this for me, but ultimately it's just they don't even consciously realize like the porn situation is there's a level where it looks like the man has that masculine leadership where the woman will just do anything for him.
It's not reality.
And it's not reality. Yeah.
And I mean, we are therapists. I was answering the question there.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
We're coaches and not therapists.
We're timeline therapists, but not certified like
we do marriage counseling.
Yeah, we don't have like our therapists. We have NLP practitioner, which is neuro linguistic programming, practitioner certifications, and master life and success coach with emphasis in relationships, and timeline therapy and hypnotherapy certifications. Yeah. So
how can people find you?
Here we're the.conscious.couple. We have a podcast called the Advance Your Life podcast. It's also in our bio here on TikTok. And then we're on IG, Creating Conscious Couples on Instagram. Yeah. And then we have our individual accounts as well.
I'm the conscious man and she's the conscious woman.
Yeah. Yeah. The.conscious.man and the.conscious.woman. Yeah. And the.conscious.couple.
And we create conscious couples.
And we create conscious couples, yeah.
And that's exactly why I wanted to have you on, because that dynamic from a married couple who has been through the crap per se and has grown out of it into a happy, healthy, masculine, feminine marriage is so beautiful. And I think more people need to see that it's, it's you're capable of doing it. It's you can do it if you choose to. You know, we kind of get stuck in this ideal that we're going to be alone forever, or life is just happening to us, when in reality it's more common than we really think.
1,000%.
Yeah.
And
So I can't thank you guys enough for coming on here tonight. I really appreciate you too, and I'm glad wasn't but a week with that day that I messaged you. I was like, hey, do you want to do a live? Because I just scrolled past your TikTok page and I started looking at your videos. I'm like, holy crap, like this, I need to have them on.
Yeah.
So
we'd love to have you on ours too. It'd be fun.
Let's do it. Let's plan.
We'll have to do that too. Yeah, that would be fun. But we appreciate you inviting us on. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you, and I'm sure there's many more we could have. And
yes,
so
we'll do it again.
Thank you for having us on here, and it's been great chatting with you. And we'll definitely we'll have you on ours live.
I appreciate connecting with you.
Yeah.
So,
all right, Brian,
you guys have a good night.
Good to see you.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So what'd you guys think of that? That was pretty cool. You're welcome. I just knew as soon as I saw their content and started talking to them that it was going to be everything that it just was. They're good at what they do. And what she was saying basically is the LPN and the masters in life coaching are certifications there's certifications in an industry that is unregulated. So, but there are certification programs that are looked up to, which it sounds like that's what they are. Anything further above and beyond what they are, you would have to go to 8 years. You would have to get your doctorate in psychology. So, I mean, they are as high as you can get as far as life coaches and health coaches and relationship coaches go. So that right there is what I'm aspiring to be, where they're at as far as coaching certifications and knowledge go. So I really needed that as someone trying to heal and learn. I'm glad you were here. I'm glad it found you. You're welcome. And I will, when I get off here at 9, tomorrow, I'll download this live and I will upload it to my YouTube page, which is Brian Morgan - Focus Not Fear on YouTube. You can find some of my more meaningful live interviews, I guess you would call it. I post them there on YouTube, so they're always there for you guys to check back to. So thank you. That's going to be hard to top that one, but I'm going to work at it. I don't have anyone coming up Sunday, or I don't have anyone else scheduled in the future, but I'm working on it. And I try and like this, what you're seeing here is really going to be the basis for my podcast when I launch that next year. It's going to be just taking people from every ordinary days of life and different life circumstances, different whatever religious backgrounds, different ethnicities, different relationship dynamics, life dynamics, and just interviewing them to see how they got from where they were to where they are, to where they are now, how they grew through their turmoil. So it just kind of, it eases the tension and the stress about, us as human beings feeling like we're the only ones that are going through the shit, because that's what I found. And that was really why I started this whole content creation a couple of years ago, or on Facebook started blogging about my story, is because I felt like, I remember being back in the dark days and feeling like I was the only one. And I just figured that if I felt insecure about talking about it, that I should probably talk about it. Like, that was my cue. If I feel insecure, I talk about it, because there's probably someone else out there in this world that feels the same way I do. And if I can start to normalize these places that I had been in my life and start to tell the story of how I took the steps to get out of it, then and only then will people start to resonate with it and say, okay, well, I'm not the only one. Here's a guy from, a regular, ordinary guy from the Midwest who's been through divorce, who's been through addiction, who's been through, all these mental issues and all these abandonment issues, but he's healed himself. He's grown through it. and I could just use my life experience to help people feel like they're not alone. So that was like really the foundational basis for why I started this. So yeah, and I'm excited. I have a few really good interviews lined up for my podcast when I started. Like the first person that I'm going to interview is a friend of mine who's a IFBB pro bodybuilder now, but he was also a Navy SEAL for 16 years. He's first generational Polish from Poland. I mean, I'm gonna have a great conversation with that guy, talking about how his whole life experience up until I think he's 38, 39 years old now. But I look so forward to interviewing him. I just like people from all different types of life, and just how they got there, just to kind of normalize that we're all cut from the same cloth. So thank you. I appreciate that. I think so many of us need to completely heal. And I mean, the word completely is kind of subjective too. What's completely healed? I mean, I would say just healing your traumas from your past is of the most importance. I don't think you can be your true authentic self for anyone, for your children, for your relationship, for your coworkers, for anyone else in life, if you're not good for you. um, Awesome. Jason's a great guy. Ashley, thank you for being here. Yeah, I did. There's on my YouTube page, the interview that I did with Jason is up on there. If you want to check that out, we talked. I think it was a couple months ago. So, yeah, Jason's great people, and so is Brandon. I think I saw him in here, but he might have ducked out. But Mr. Gratitude, he's got some good information as far as relationships go. Yeah, and so here's where what it really comes down to. And this is, I mean, wasn't able to get into this with them, but I really wanted to. I could have talked to them for hours. Um, Everything comes back to self-awareness. It comes back to your own inner dialogue that you have with you. And if you're unwilling to stop bullshitting yourself and accept you for who you are, your flaws and all, then nothing's going to change. You're going to consistently and constantly try and project this person that you think you are or that you want to be to the world, out to the society, as like a protection or as like a confidence builder, and it never works. You're always going to be on edge, you're always going to be anxious, you're always going to be defining yourself as something that you're not. And it all comes down to hi Brandon, it all comes down to you having the self-awareness to accept you for who you are in this point, in this space and time right now, accepting all your past, accepting your present, and knowing about where you look to go in the future. And the only way that you can move forward in the future, space and time, is by dealing with your past. If you have a past, it needs to get dealt with. People so many times just bury their past away and jump into relationship after relationship and failed relationship after failed relationship, have toxic relationships with their family, toxic relationships with their coworkers. And it's this life of toxicity, all because they're unwilling to set the boundaries for themselves to go heal themselves and have the discipline to actually see it through. So yeah, it's just self-awareness. Everything comes back to self. You can always, any issue that you're going through, any anxiety that you're having, anything that you're dealing with in life, it all comes back to self-awareness. That's just how I like to simplify it. Now, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a life coach yet. I'm working on all the certifications that they were talking about, but this is just me and my life experience. Nothing changed in my life until I was self-aware of who I was and accepted it truly and wholly, and with all my heart. And then it's about doing the work. Then it's about having the willpower to go fix whatever's broke. Therapy therapy. If you don't want to go to therapy, if you don't want to hire a life coach, if you don't want to do those things, then it's going to be very difficult. If you can't afford it, and I understand there's people are in that situation, go to YouTube, go to psychology.com, start reading self-help. What in the search bars on psychologytoday.com, in the search bar on YouTube, type in the things that happened to you. I was abandoned by my dad. My dad was never around. My mom was never around. I was abused. I was raped. I was, whatever your thing is that you're hiding from the world inside your brain, type that in the search bar. There's so much good information out there to help you, start to at least understand that you're not the only one. Go to Instagram and search hashtags that have to do with what you're dealing with. Hashtag sexual abuse, hashtag narcissism, hashtag, whatever, father abandonment, whatever your thing is. There are people out there who are dealing with the same thing that you're dealing with. And you could start to get a view looking through the window of their life and see that they're thriving through their turmoil, their trauma. Then you'll start to equate it with, I can do this too. It's possible. And that was really the catalyst for me getting sober. Was I started following hashtag sober, hashtag sobriety on Instagram. And I just started from the shadows, from the sidelines, just looking at how people were living their life who were sober. And it just kind of the script started to flip, and I started to realize I can live a fun, exciting, interesting life sober. I don't need booze to keep me going. Yeah, I've been meaning to do that, May. I do the unburdenings. I do the unburdenings through a spirit, through through the Christian religion standpoint. You can do it up to a certain point, and then if you're not religious or spiritual, you'll have to stop but yeah, I can do that. I've been meaning to do that. I just haven't. I'm going to get through this series this week that I don't know if you paid attention to. It's the 5 pillars, and I've been talking about it from a man's point of view. What does a good man look like? Next week, I'm going to do what does a good woman look like, and then I will do some more on triggers, and then healing those triggers. But you just have to start. You just have to have the willpower and the want to start. Start moving in the direction that you want. I'll never forget when I went on this journey. I kind of had this visual of this long tube. Maybe let's just say it was 5 miles long or something, 2 miles long. And I was looking in this tube, and I could just barely see this bright light at the end of the tunnel. And it was I just pictured that as my very best self waiting for me. And I just had to have the gall to enter that tunnel and start down the path. It's a dark, dreary, lonely, exhausting endeavor to get to your best self, but it's 100% possible. Thank you, Caitlin. It's unburdenings are amazing if you're a Christian, as far as healing your inner child from a Christian vantage point. They're very healthy, very, very great. If you believe in God, that's a great way to go about healing your inner child. And I have to say, if not, there's other ways. If you're in a spiritual realm, there's doing shadow work. I mean, I'm sure other, religious deities have their own version of, healing inner child work. I don't know what they all are. I only know shadow work, and I only know unburdenings. But at its core, it's just healing your past inner child wounds. Yeah, I will definitely do that. Joshua, how are you, sir? Love you, my friend. So, you guys have any more questions? I got a few more minutes. We did good tonight. You guys did great. I can't believe you guys are just blowing up now. Look at that. Thank you, Becky. I appreciate you. And you're welcome, Cinders. But it's, if you've ever had the thought of wanting to just be at peace with yourself, wanting to have your anxieties just for the most part gone, your depression for the most part gone, this is how you get there. This is how you get to that place of serene, serenity, peaceful, space that's just, you just don't care anymore what's happening around you. You don't care that people are talking about you or how they perceive you or how they, look at you. You just literally do not. You stay right in your control circle. You just literally do not care what anyone thinks anymore. I thank you, Caitlin. I'm working on it. I'm trying to manage it. It's just me. So me and Wendy when Wendy's available, but she's working her butt off right now too. So it's a lot going into this. It's a lot that I have to do. I have to get really moving on my certifications, and I'm going to have to re-enroll in college and get an associate's degree in addiction counseling. So there's a lot of stuff that I have to do over the next 2 years, but hopefully I will be able to launch parts of it by spring of next year. As far as start doing some life coaching and health coaching, I'll have some apparel out, stuff like that. Podcast. It's just time. I really need to sit down and focus on getting the podcast equipment, getting the setting, getting all that stuff, because it will be a video podcast. So there's just a lot that goes into it. Thank you, Crystal. I appreciate you too. I appreciate you guys for hanging out. I mean, I know it takes time away from your lives. And 4 days. Yeah, Wendy's been killing herself. But the truth of the matter is that I know it's overwhelming. I know it takes a lot of effort, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life that this is where I'm supposed to go. I've had these conversations with God. I've seen the signs. I've had him, not necessarily speak to me in words, but speak to me in circumstance and situation and coincidence that says this is what we're going to do. If it takes me 3 to 5 years to transition from my trade that I've been in for the last 25 years, to being able to do this full time, then that's what it takes. And I'm committed to doing it because I 100% believe that this is what he wants me to do and that he is working through me to help you guys. This isn't me. This isn't like if I was doing Brian's life, I wouldn't be doing this. Just saying. Like, this is God working through me. I believe it is a 2-year degree, May. Depending on how much effort I want to put into it. So, yeah, I mean, if I was being my selfish self and doing what Brian wanted to do, I wouldn't be sitting here for 2 hours twice a week and having these conversations with people. I wouldn't be, spending all the time that it takes to make each of those TikTok videos. And Wendy knows how frustrating those can be to make sometimes. And, I wouldn't be accepting DMs from random strangers on all social media platforms to talk with them about their issues and try and talk them off a ledge or trying to give them some direction. I wouldn't be doing any of that. I would be doing things that pleased me. And not that this doesn't please me, because it does, but it's for a bigger reason. It's for a higher power. It's where I'm supposed to be in life. Thank you, Crystal. Yeah, by God's grace, I don't, who knew? Like, I started drinking when I was 13. I quit when I was 40. And I had no idea that this vulnerable man was inside of me, that this man who could articulate his thoughts and feelings so clearly and concisely was inside of me. I had no clue. Absolutely no clue. But the truth of the matter is that I believe that God had me go through all of those trials and tribulations from when I was 10 years old to when I was 40 years old, all of those experiences, so I would have the life experience. I would have the experience to articulate and have the empathy for other people who are going through similar things. So that's why I think I'm here at this point. So, but I am going to go. I have to work tomorrow, so I picked up some overtime, so I need to get into bed shortly. But I appreciate all you guys. It was another record live. I can't really believe that you guys have done this 4 weeks consecutively. But I appreciate all of you for doing this. So, if I had to believe anything as a reason for my traumas, I have to have a future purpose. So I want to touch on one thing real quick, Becky. A friend of mine, I've told this story before, but it's been a while since I told it. And I did a TikTok on this a while back. Whatever your trauma is, a TikTok on this a while back. Whatever your trauma is, and let's just say, so I'm going to use my friend that I talked to as an example. They had gone through a rape situation and they were completely broken about it and couldn't understand why and asked me why. And I didn't really have the answer, but I told them I would get back to them. And I did some research in the Bible, and the only thing that I could come up with was this, that whatever happened to you, would you allow it to happen to you again if you could save 10 other people from going through the same thing? And I know that's hard to hear because some traumas and some traumatic events are extremely horrible and extremely heartbreaking, extremely mentally and physically and emotionally damaging. But I think if you ask yourself that question, would you do it again if you could save 10 other people from going through it? That might kind of start to change the perspective and the mindset and give it less power over you than it has. Maybe. I don't know. But that's the only thing that I can come up with. Why bad things happen to good people. So, if that makes any sense. It's all in what you do with what happened to you. Yeah, none of it's fair. I didn't want half of the things to happen to me that they did in the point in time that they happened. But now I'm like, yeah, that effing sucked. I can't believe someone would do those things to me, but I wouldn't be who I am today had I not experienced it. So, yeah, I just think, and I presented that TikTok, I think it was back before Christmas, I don't remember. But the majority of people said, yeah, like I would do it again to protect 10 other people. And I had a handful, like maybe let's just say 10% of the comments. That was a big TikTok. There was a lot of interaction with that one. Said absolutely not. I couldn't endure that again, and that's fine too. There's no right way, but regardless of how you think about it, you have to figure out a way out of whatever you're dealing with. So it's important to think about your darkest, most horrible days in a different perspective, different mindset. If you want to stay miserable, you're going to stay miserable, and you're going to surround yourself with people who are miserable, and they're going to play into your misery. They're going to validate your misery. They're going to agree with you that life is horrible and, everything that's happened to you shouldn't have happened, and you're just going to live with that agreement. Or you can flip the script and say, yeah, it happened to me, but it's not going to define me. I'm going to grow through it. I'm going to rewrite the story, Ashley, 100%. And you always ask, why did it happen? Figure out why it happened. I don't know why it happened. So, anyway, I'm going to go, guys. I appreciate all you. We have to find accountability in varying degrees. Yeah, and some people didn't ask for what happened to them, but you're right. I mean, there's, maybe that horrible thing that happened to you, maybe your why is so you can become an advocate for it, so you can become an advocate against it, so you can help other people, not let it happen to them. I don't know. But that's the self-awareness, that's the self-acceptance, that's the inner dialogue that you have to have with yourself and choose to be in misery or choose to grow. It's up to you. Ashley, I appreciate you too. So anyway, guys, have an amazing night. I will be back on Sunday night, Easter night. I'm not sure if I'll have anybody on. I'm going to try, but otherwise we'll just sit and talk. I'll come up with, some ideas on what we can talk about, but I'll be back on Sunday night. So, but anyway, have a good night, guys. I appreciate you all.